Welcome back to another video. We are back and we are talking about Bob Lazar today, guys. This is a topic that I've been wanting to talk about since I first made this channel. It's a super interesting topic when it comes to UFOs. Probably the most popular if you know anything about UFOs, unless you've been living under a rock the last 100 years, then you probably know who Bob Lazar is. All right, so in this video, part one, we're gonna be going through kind of what Bob's first days working at S4 are like and kind of give you an introduction into his whole storyline and kind of broaden your scope a little bit about if you kind of knew who Bob was. I'm gonna give you a little bit more details that you might not have heard before. And if you didn't know who he is at all, then this will be helpful, kind of give you an idea of who he is. This video took a lot of research to kind of make happen, so I'm probably gonna make it into like a multi-part video because otherwise it just might be too long to film all at once. I mean, I'm gonna film it all at once, but I'm probably gonna split it up into a bunch of videos. I don't want to give you guys another hour and a half long video because that's just too long. Nobody wants to watch a video for that long. I mean, this isn't a movie. This is something you're meant to enjoy little by little. So I'm probably gonna split this one up for a couple parts. So you might see a different version of me kind of doing an introduction for some of the videos in the future about this topic. So Bob Lazar is most famous for claiming to have worked on alien spacecraft at a sub-base of Area 51 called S4. Now, a lot of you guys know what Area 51 is. It is a military base where they study like new flying technologies, essentially. Like one of the latest stealth bombers was made at Area 51. Before, this was way before any other stealth bombers had been made. This was like the highest tech one was tested and basically made there. So, it's a very secretive place. It used to be off Google Maps for a long time where you couldn't even see it on Google Maps. It was all blacked out. It's out in the middle of the desert, out in the middle of in the Midwest of the US. Bob Lazar claims to have worked there. So the way that this kind of all came to be was Bob Lazar had a car. A lot of us have cars, but Bob Lazar was a little bit, more out there with the way he wanted to drive his car. He found a way to put a jet engine inside of his car. And he was famous around town. I think he was in an area called Los Alamos. I'm not sure if that's the actual town or what, but he lived in near Los Alamos Air Force Base at the time. And he made a jet engine car hybrid. And he was famous for flying around town in it because it was so loud. Everybody knew who he was. He was in the papers. And he was kind of known around town as like this quirky genius guy that was really good at putting stuff together. So that's kind of how he got on the military's radar, was from doing stuff like attaching a jet engine to a car. Now at the time, when he made this jet engine car, he was working at Los Alamos Air Force Base. So the military kind of already knew who he was. He was a big name around town. And at some point, he was approached to work at a military sub-base at Area 51 called S4. And this is when things kind of start to get crazy. Here's a clip of Bob kind of explaining what his first day on the job there was like.
There we go. So take me back to first day on the job. You accept a job. They take you out there.
Yeah. It's... The first day, really, I didn't really get to see a whole lot. The first day was essentially just paperwork. That's when I flew into Area 51 proper. And I left McCarran Airport and flew what they call the Janet flights. Just, a passenger plane from Las Vegas to Area 51. And it was really just going through a mountain of paperwork that day. From security clearances to... God, it was like 2 or 3 hours of just solid paperwork, and that was really an uneventful first day.
So the way that he says that he got to the S4 part of the base from Area 51 is that he was basically picked up in a blacked out bus. So the bus was all blacked out on the sides, and they picked him up at some bus stop on Area 51 or somewhere around there, and brought him to this hangar like built in the side of a mountain. And so Bob's theory is that the hangar was built kind of into the side of the mountain in a way so that it would not show up on satellite photos and stuff. Another weird thing that he realized once he got inside the base was, so once he walked inside of the hangar, as he's walking around, they have all these posters on the wall of spacecraft like the one he was working on. So like the sport model one, like the silver disc one. I'll put a photo up of it now. Ones like that on a poster, kind of landing, it looks like, on the ground or whatever, and underneath it says, "They're here," in quotation marks or whatever. He said those posters were all over the base. Everywhere he would walk, he'd see one of those posters, which is a weird choice to have at a place where you're actually working on it. I guess it was kind of a joke. He said a lot of people there kind of made jokes about how crazy it was that they were working on aliens and stuff, but or alien spacecraft. But yeah, that was kind of a weird little tidbit that he pointed out. So there's a great interview of Joe Rogan's podcast, of Joe Rogan talking to this guy. I'll put the link to the podcast down below, so if you want to watch it or listen to it or whatever, I'll put that down below, and I'll put a couple other links about Bob Lazar down below so that you guys can get the information you need about him and stuff. There's a couple interesting articles and a couple cool links. In this interview, Joe Rogan asked him kind of, when did it first get weird?
When did things get weird? When did you realize? Like, at what point in time did you say, hey, this is not normal work? Like, this doesn't even seem like it's from this planet.
That, I can't tell you what day that occurred on, because so much time has gone by, the days have kind of fused into one, and I can't separate the days.
Was it a slow burn, or was there a moment of recognition?
Well, the first inkling I had was when I came in. There's this facility that is at S4. It's in the side of a mountain. And normally we had pulled in with the bus and gone around the front through a normal double door. This time that I went in, there were hangar doors open. I went in through the hangar door, and in the hangar door was the disc, the flying saucer that I worked on. I saw it sitting there, and we walked by it. It had a little American flag stuck on the side, and I thought, oh my God, this finally explains all the flying saucer stories. This is just an advanced fighter, and this is fucking hilarious.
Right.
So I went by, I slid my hand alongside it. I got reprimanded immediately for touching the thing. And there was a guy, an armed guard, that followed us in and just said, keep your eyes forward and your hands at your side and just walk in the door. So that was the first time I had seen anything that was weird.
So after a few days of working there and kind of getting his training done, getting used to kind of the area, I guess, he was introduced to his new partner, who was named Dennis. And Dennis had been working at this subbase of Area 51 for a while now. It was kind of Dennis's job to train Bob and kind of fill him in on everything that had happened before Bob got there. Now, the thing about how they exchange information at these military bases is, Bob describes it as kind of, they compartmentalize it in a way where only certain people have certain information. So Bob and his partner Dennis, who he worked with kind of researching this stuff and trying to reverse engineer the technology, they would have a certain piece of the puzzle. Another group working on another part of it would have a certain piece of the puzzle, but nobody was allowed to communicate with anyone else. So the bosses wouldn't tell them everything about that thing. They would just put the craft and the propulsion system in front of them and basically say, figure this out. They wouldn't give them much information outside of that. And they weren't allowed to talk to any of the people studying the other crafts or the other things to do with the craft they were working on. So we'll get back to that later. So basically, long story short, Bob says that there were 9 crafts there. One time he was walking down past the hangar where they kept the version that he was working on, the craft he was working on, which he calls the sport model, because it was like very sleek and slim and kind of typical disc-shaped UFO, silver UFO. And usually there were hangar doors in the back that were closed, so he could just see that one. Well, one day he was walking by and those hangar doors were open all the way down this long hangar, and he could see all the other UFOs or all the other spacecraft that were stored in this big hangar. And he said as far as he could see, he saw 9 of them, including the one he was working on. The people that were studying those other ones, as I said, weren't allowed to communicate with Bob, and he was not allowed to communicate with them. So they couldn't exchange information at all. The only person Bob was allowed to exchange information with was Dennis, his partner. Which kind of, as Bob describes, it kind of like stops them from being able to make as much progress, and they can't really exchange the information they need to really get a full picture of how all these things work. And the whole thing about working as a scientist or doing research on things is communicating with other people who are doing that same research and putting your ideas together to try to find a solution or try to figure out how things work. And he said that because they compartmentalize the information like this, so that only a couple people know this, a couple people know that, it kind of like stops them from being able to do their work the best way possible.
This project was to back engineer the alien craft, and specifically it was to try and back engineer and see if we can duplicate the technology with available materials. Now, to do this, they split the project into many different pieces for several reasons. They do this on all classified projects, so nobody has the complete story, but they compartmentalize everything.
Now, when he first started this job, he describes these briefings that they used to make him go to. And he says that in the briefings, this is before he saw the craft, in the briefings he said that they were describing reverse engineering these crafts that they had found in the briefings, and they said all this other crazy stuff in these briefings. So one of the things that these briefings described was the historical involvement of Earth for the past 10,000 years with extraterrestrial beings described as gray aliens, which are those, gray ones with the big eyes, from a planet orbiting the twin binary star system Zeta Reticuli. So essentially, these briefings were saying that most of these crafts and the interactions that humans have with these beings, they are from this star system called Zeta Reticuli. And that's really all we know. Outside of that, he doesn't really give it a ton of information about what was in the briefings, and here's why. He thinks that a lot of the information in those briefings was actually intentionally misleading him to go and tell other people. So, for example, if he went and told someone else, oh yeah, this briefing said that the star system Zeta Reticuli is where these aliens are coming from, then if that information gets leaked and the next day they see it on the news, they know that Bob is the one that told that information, even though it's not true, because Bob is the only one they told that particular information.
A lot of times they'll take in real high security jobs. I mean, they'll intentionally insert nonsense into them, whether it's to confuse the fact or if for someone was to leak it out, they would carry that information along and know where it came from. So I read through the documents, but I didn't know if this was part of some kind of test or or what, or was it potentially realistic? I mean, I really didn't consider it being all that possible as far as being the actual thing that I was going to work on at the time.
So he thinks that they make up information and tell it to different people in the program. That way they can tell who is leaking what information and when. So basically he just says that they sneak little bits of information that aren't true, and there's some crazy stuff, so that if that information leaks, they know who to fire, basically. All right, so we're gonna stop there for now. We'll come back and do a part 2 for the next video, and then probably a part 3 as well to kind of round out the rest of the story. The next video we'll talk about the rest of his time there and kind of how he got so he had to leave there. We'll get into that in the next video. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for supporting the channel. Please, if you haven't already subscribe. Please give the video a like, comment down below, tell me if you loved it, you hate it, whatever. Just doing any kind of engagement helps, guys. So thank you so much for those of you that have been doing that. That means a lot to me. I want to keep making videos, and you guys' support really helps me a lot. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I will see you next week or next couple days whenever I finish part 2 of the video. And yeah, do something nice for somebody today, please. I'll talk to you later. Bye.